All right, welcome to the Boost Conversations with people promoting mental health. And we've got another fabulous one here with Robert Whitley from Healthy Coin. And I'm excited to talk with Robert. We've already been chatting ahead of time in the green room. And Robert, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. A little anxious, but I'm excited about the future.
Oh, okay. Tell us about the anxiety.
Uh, well, I'm gonna be a dad times three in September. So 2 months from now, I'm gonna have three daughters, uh, all under the age of three. So pray for your brother.
So, is that triplets or is this your third?
Good clarifying question. No, this is the third. So I've got a 3-year-old, a 1-year-old, and now, we're rounding it out with the third.
Oh, nice. And all girls.
I
Yeah.
can't miss, man.
We've got one girl and she's 9. And, the days are long and the years are short, as they say. But all three under 3, man,
I
that's
know.
that's amazing.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So what
just
is? But you've already done this. So what's the anxiety about the third one? What is it about the third one?
um I was gonna make a funny about like having to pay for three weddings, but that's
Oh,
not.
that's
That's
not funny
not.
at all.
Yeah, I got enough time to um, build that. I don't know. I think it's anxiety producing because like we've done it twice now, and I've noticed with the second one they kind of get the hand me downs, right? They don't really get their own thing because we have so much girl stuff from like 0 to 3, 3 to 6, all the clothes and I don't know. I still want it to be a special and unique experience for them. So I just got to think proactively, like, how do I make sure that their childhood is not like a rinse and repeat of their older sibling? You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Hmm. Yeah, I'm the youngest of 4 kids and was raised on like a rural pastor's salary. Like we were below the poverty line for sure. I have never confirmed that, but I could just tell you. But we would get these hand me downs, and one time I got these shoes. I pulled these shoes out of a bag, and I was like, "Oh man, these are dope. I love these shoes." And I don't know, I didn't say dope because I was like 8, but no, nobody said that at the time. Um, but bringing it to the current, so I love these shoes, and I was like, the coolest thing about these shoes is that you can. There was this little like hexagonal pattern on the side, and you could change out the color of that hexagon shape with other colors. And then I wore them to school, and I quickly learned those were cheerleading shoes. And I was not a cheerleader. Nothing wrong with being a cheerleader. I just
No.
was not one.
The innocence of youth, though.
Oh,
You
the
felt
innocence of
good.
youth. Yeah, no, I got shoes one time that were pumps, but only one pumped. but but to your point, so this is a really fascinating point, which is like when my daughter came into the world, or just before, my brother, who's always dropping these wisdom dimes on me, was like, well, try to. Well, he said 2 things. He's like, this is the hardest job you'll ever love, and try to treat this one like like she's your second. And I was like, oh
Mm.
man, that's interesting because you can overcook, your approach to making like we bought the bulletproof car seat and the SUV of strollers, and it's like, oh well, uh, we didn't need to do that so much. But there's also like this natural cadence to children's order, that I see shape out in the 4 of us as kids, and it's like the first one makes the rules, the second one breaks the rules, the third one um, follows every rule, and then the fourth one's like there's no rules. It's like, okay, the parents get to that point, they're like, just get in the van before the van leaves.
Mm.
So like, I'm curious to throw that back to you just for a reaction for how much should we follow along with that sort of natural order of, well, this is the middle child thing versus
Mm.
what can you do as a parent uh, to design, help design the life you want to provide for your kids.
Yeah, yeah. I love your story, and I didn't know that prior to hopping on this call with you. So we're on the other side of the spectrum. So I'm the oldest of four. So I guess all the rules were made with me, right? But my parents did a phenomenal job. Much like you, I come from humble beginnings, so we struggle a little bit, and I don't know. I just learned early on, like we're all very different, and there's this temptation to parent all the kids the same. Like if one works, it's like, oh, well, the rubric was perfect with this one. Let's just do it again, you know? But that's not always the case because you got different personalities, different nuances, stances on issues. So I guess for me, if you ping pong it back over to me, I just want to be receptive to those unique nuances, right? Like, oh, okay, you ain't rocking with the kale. All right, forget the kale, baby girl. We gonna try some collard greens or whatever, right? Or okay, you don't want to do tap dance. Got you. Your sister did it. You don't like it. You want to hoop? Let's go hoop. You know, like just being flexible. I think that's what I want to go for, and not just relying on that tribal knowledge. Like that'd be a fail for a dad, in my opinion.
Hmm. Yeah, you're making me think there's a universal law, which is
Ooh.
if you've met one person, you've met one person. So, like when I have gone through these first 9 years, one of the first things I had to do was get out of my projections of myself for my daughter. So I put her in soccer, sure that she would love soccer, and she did not love soccer. Just wired differently. She loves
Mm-hmm.
horseback riding. She loves ballet. She's more of a solo sport person. So then I had to like stop forecasting myself onto her. And then it's probably similar, although we only have one, it's probably similar with other kids that come into the house. Not only are they their unique person, but they're not the other people who came into the house earlier, which we think, okay, we did this once, we got it all figured out. And
Right.
then,
Right.
and then the pendulum swings some other way.
Nailed it. Nailed it.
Well, I didn't know we were going to talk about parenting, but this is a great start. This is a wonderful start to mental health and promoting mental health. So let's get into the scaffolding of this conversation. Um, Although we may have had dessert first. Here, that's great. I've already loved talking with you. But tell us your virtual hug and your shameless plug. So tell us something you're grateful for, and then tell us what you do. Just as much or as little as you want to brag on the work you're doing. It comes best from you. But start with something you're grateful for.
Yeah. Um, and it's probably too closely related to the dessert, but um, my virtual hug's going to be my wife. I know, cliche, like, of course he's going to say that. But I met her when I was 12, and it's like modern twist on the Romeo and Juliet story, right? She looks different than I do. Our families were very different growing up, but we fell in love early, got married, and and embracing this entrepreneurship journey, you sacrifice a lot. And I think for every hour I invest into the company to build shareholder value, equity, all the whatever, it's like double for her because now she has to like forego the traditional time with the spouse. Like I have to miss a lot of things. Like when I first started this out, and she sacrificed a lot to help me, kind of build this into what it is today. All while growing arms in her belly, right? Like and then never complaining, never frowning. And as I get a little bit older, I'm like, that's a huge investment. Like that, she's probably the greatest ROI I've ever had because she's helped stabilize me, but also like rounded out areas that I needed to improve as a man. So that's my virtual hug. If you're watching this, which you are, you watch all my stuff. Thank you, Melissa. Shameless plug, man. What am I proud of? So we've been building out this really um, unique offering for our clients. So, if you don't know, we work with mental health practitioners, specifically private practice owners. And one of the challenging parts for them that we've realized is like, right, you kind of start off as a solo practice, you do your thing, you see clients one on one. But then the business evolves either from aspiration or demand, whatever, and the team grows. But one of those like really messy areas is kind of like trying to nail jello to the wall. It's kind of messy, very frustrating. It's compensating staff, right? Like how do you do it? Right? W-2, 1099. Okay, well, how much, right? Okay, well, do you do a fixed rate? Do you do hourly? Do you do a split? And then there's like administrative time. So do you pay them like a separate hourly rate? And then like there's all these variables. And if you didn't go to school to be an accountant, that's scary. It's like that's so intimidating. It's frustrating, and there's a lot of ways it can go wrong. And then you throw in the fact that you have to communicate this to the person you want to hire. So you got to look somebody in their eyes, sitting kneecap to kneecap, and saying, "I think you are worth." And then you spell out the variables, trying to size it up with the market, right? It's incredibly frustrating, and I've seen it get really, really awkward. So I'm happy, after doing this for 4 years, we've kind of built out this new deliverable where we help those owners craft a good offer, back it up with solid data that reinforces that there's going to be a solid margin at the end of the day. So that's my shameless plug. We call it the staff utilization report, and it's going really well so far.
Wow. What a superpower. Anytime I hear anything in that range, partly because it's so far from where I am, like in my zone of genius. It is not as a CPA or anything related to staff utilization, optimization, and even how to put together models of these pay structures for staff as you grow, which I can say that people are one of the most expensive things you can invest in, and it makes sense, for me to do it. But I'm always questioning and wondering, how am I doing it right? So you focus on specifically the mental health space, and solopreneurs are really practices that have
Yeah.
probably hit another growth. Do you have like an ideal customer that you're working within? Is there a point where you are better off letting them grow a little bit more before they sync up with you? Or
Hmm. We don't really have a floor, right? If the need's there, we have a package that can support them. I will say we have a ceiling though. So for practices that do north of $20 million per year, it's likely best for them to have their own internal team of accountants, like a CFO, senior controller, because the scale's larger and the volume is probably a little bit too much to outsource to a firm like ours.
mhm,
So really big window, but like anyone under 20 million we can support.
under 20 million. And how did you get into it? What led you into this focus specifically on practices?
Yeah. I'm not scared to admit it. It was a Jesus thing. Like, as a man of faith, I went out after hearing the call, like, "Hey, you got to open up an accounting firm." I'm like, "I have a good job though. Like, why would I rock the boat?" And kept feeling the nudge. I did. And as a young black dude from Chicago that didn't come from much, I was hustling, Steve, right? Like if you could fog a mirror and you would pay my invoice, I would take you on as a client. I would. And I grew fast. I was very fortunate, very blessed. It was obvious that God was kind of touching it. But then it got to a point where I had to pick a niche because there's this thing in our world we call complexity tax, right? Where if 1 minute I'm talking to a real estate guy and the next call I got to talk to a doctor and then a manufacturing company and then a software developer, I can't. I'm a jack of all trades. Like I can't really be a master for them because there's so much I got to know about their industry. So I looked at our little portfolio and I saw which ones were growing the fastest, which industry. It was mental health. I also had a therapist at the time that was pushing me into it, and I just kind of felt this divine internal like nudge, like it's that is 621-330. That's your next code, bro. And I'm like, well, let's double down. Healthy coin. Boom. Here's the carve out. And now we're here.
Wow, that's amazing. That's incredible. So there was like divine intervention in this. There was some guidance from above on where you were going with, for one, starting the business, and then two, where to take the niche,
Mhm.
drill down into it farther. I love that concept of complexity tax.
Yeah.
I've never heard that, but I feel like I needed to hear that.
Can I riff on that real quick?
Yeah.
Um, I'll make it interactive. So, how many SKUs do you think um, General Motors has?
SKUs.
SKU, like SKUs.
So like individual parts or
Yeah,
pieces that they're sourcing and buying.
right.
Oh my goodness. SKUs. 60,000.
It's up there. It's in the millions.
Oh my goodness.
And now I want you to think about how many SKUs Apple has.
Okay. Now, are these products they're selling, or are these products
Selling.
they're buying? They're
Right.
selling.
Selling.
I don't know. 500.
Sub 100.
Wow.
It's, what is it? Tablets, laptops, phones. It's not a lot, right? So
Yeah.
the whole concept of complexity tax, at least from my interpretation of it, is that if you can just master a few things, the world will make you get bigger, right? Like you will have just like exponential influence because you are the single source of truth for those few things.
Hmm.
But if you try and master, like, there's just no way.
Hmm.
You can't sell everything. You can't do everything. So for me, I'm like, I just got to master one thing, and then slowly we can like build upon that.
Hmm. Yeah, that's so tough for me. Um, I look at, well, you referenced GM. Is that the car? Is that the company you talked about?
It's just the first thing that came to mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So they have, I mean, SKU sprawl. I mean, they're everywhere, and there's something to that. Or I look at brands like Virgin. It's like you have an airline and a record store, and what else? Or we see Amazon starting with books and then getting into everything else.
Mhm.
On-site spas or whatever. But I do believe like what you're saying, which is drilling into the expertise lets you continue to work from the core, or would let me continue to work from the core. So how do I make these decisions about new products or new ventures? How do you find that third way between I need to grow and I need to prune in order to spur growth?
Mhm. It's a case by case scenario, to be honest, right? I love your example of Virgin, which I think it's just the creative outflow of the founder, right? Like he's just wired that way. Lots of bold ideas and strategies. But I do think there's a distinction between specialization and evolution, right? Like, my firm today, while we specialize in one thing, we may evolve into offering a whole complete separate line of services. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I've just seen a lot of people run themselves ragged by trying to be everything, or sorry, trying to be something to everybody,
Yeah.
as opposed to being everything to somebody,
Hmm.
right? Um, but no, evolution, expanding, land and expand. That's one of my taglines. I love it. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. And for the, just for the person out there, maybe a few steps behind you or inspired by someone like you, when they look at their future, it's like you sell 1,000 things to 1,000 people and it's $1 million. It's like not, you don't have to have world domination in order to have a 7-figure business. Like it's not that complicated. It's hard, it's incredibly hard. That's a very different thing. But um, I was watching a Steve Jobs interview, this weekend, and he said most people, the thing that most people struggle with is simply asking, like picking up the phone, overcoming the fear to do the thing. That's really the thing that gets in our way, because I like when I got into this conference business, it was like an acorn fell from the heavens, and the word was like, don't kill it, like just try to grow a sapling. And that's what I tried to do. And it was such a small little thing at the time. And then the last 3 years, revenue, like little kids, like babies, they grow up fast. And like, even despite my failings and my weaknesses, like we've, from a revenue standpoint, gone 2.5x every year for the past 3 years. And we're doing it again. And it's like, oh my goodness, you just put time in the game and a ring around the tree, and then that ring is, there's some kind of logarithmic or exponential growth that happens just as a result of getting another ring. Well, that ring is a lot bigger than the one a few years back, simply by the nature of how things grow.
Hmm. That's beautiful. Congratulations, man. That
Well,
is no
thank you.
small feat. We're not just going to sweep that under the rug. That's, to borrow your word from earlier, that's dope.
It is dope. I look at it when I get down. I look back far enough. That's what I do when I'm like
Hmm.
in the weeds and in the muddy middle. I'm like, okay, go back and look at 3 years ago when, like this time last 2, 3 years ago, we'd had 5 tickets sold, and we're like
Hmm.
90 days out from the conference. So we're not that way anymore. But I'm grateful. I really am grateful. And a lot of it has been adding, this year especially, adding project management and graphic design and social media leadership, the people, that I can look back and see, oh, wow, you helped us level up the work that I was home rolling and putting out into the market, which was good enough, it was good enough, and we shipped it and we did it. So
Hmm.
there's something to be said for shipping and not trying to be perfect. But yeah.
Totally.
So is there a like a a macro view on sort of what's going on that has you encouraged about how you're positioning yourself in terms of the small and mid-sized practice, because there is some sense of a tidal wave, or at least an ebb and flow of PE money and private equity money, and franchise models and other attempts at economies of scale.
Hmm. Yeah. So, sorry, I think that there might be two questions wrapped in there. So, macro view on like the mental health industry as a whole, and then did you also ask for my? So
Yeah,
run that by me one more
exactly.
time.
No, you're
Forgive me.
right. It was a little convoluted, but it was two questions. So one, so you're positioned at like this. You have this ceiling, 20 million, and in light of what could be perceived as like a trend of at scale, massive, multi-site, large organizations trying to solve mental health. You've positioned your firm like well below that, the 20 million and under firm.
Hmm.
And it seems like those big companies are just coming to eat their lunch, in some cases. And they have very high powered CFOs who can run these models and maybe outpace them with marketing. So what gives you confidence that your model has future staying power with the types of customers that you're targeting and working with?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question, and thank you for crystallizing it for me. I just needed a little help. Um, so our our position in the market is that we will meet you where you are, and we will hustle as hard as you hustle. So, I've got small practices that I work with that do $130,000 per year in revenue, which I think that's great. It's not obviously not the biggest that we work with, but that's like on the smaller end. But when we have those strategy meetings with those practices, we're having conversations about scaling and growing that to 500,000, 1.2, all the way up to 2 million. Because I do think it's fundamentally possible. It's feasible. You just have to, like you did, Steve, you got to put the time in, make some very actionable investments, double down on things that are working, prune the things that aren't. And then along the way, let's be wise about how we spend the money. Let's manage our costs. Let's get our tax burden down and kind of scale and grow that way. So for us, like our unique value add is that like we know the industry. We have actually cut off a huge part of our revenue so that we could really wrap our arms around your language, your world, from CPT codes to all the letters that come after somebody's name and what they mean, right? So, like the beauty of not having to explain to your CPA, another acronym, what the difference between an LCSW and LCPC might be and how that relates to compensation or reimbursement rates. There's so much value in that. So when people talk to us, they're like, you already know how billing works for insurance companies? I'm like, yeah, where are you paneled? And they're like, you know what paneling means? I'm like, shouldn't everyone? And then it dawns on me, not everyone does. So for conversations, it makes it like we're in the end zone. Like we talking about scoring a touchdown. We're not talking about, what's the first down play. Like we're already in there. Um, so for us, we do really well in the small to medium sized space. And kind of segueing into the second part of your question, um, I'm really optimistic, right? Because I've seen how the big groups, right, the 9-figure plus groups, massive, just globs, just eating everybody up. Kind of like, you remember that game where like there's like one blob and the blob can only eat the blobs with the lower number. And then the
Yeah.
goal is to like get a big enough blob that you can just dominate. It's very much
Isn't that the goal of life? I'm just kidding.
it accumulate,
Just
maybe.
be a big glob of
Yeah.
accumulating monster.
But the problem is the glob's not adding value anymore. They're just accumulating points on the board. And as a basketball player, it doesn't matter if you score 50 points. Did you win? Are you actually adding value? And from my perspective, I just don't find that the bigger ones are because they don't have enough touch, enough influence to really see any positive change. So for me, I kind of like helping my small clients go up against the blob. Um, and I champion that effort because I think that the work they do, it's more intimate, it's more intentional. They got the receipt, so they're really showing up and doing the work. Um, but then there's also a part of me that embraces the culture we're in now. So you mentioned the PE, right? For a lot of my clients, a goal for them will be to exit their practice, and they may actually end up selling to a PE firm. No shame in that. I'm not gonna get on a soapbox. Oh, yeah. No, it's all good. To each their own. But if you choose to do that, let's make sure those multiples are high. I'm talking higher than Snoop Dogg on 420, right? Like, let's get the valuation up, nice and juicy, so that you can sail off into retirement with a nice little nest egg. So, I get that they're in the space. To the best of my ability, I just want to help the small guys grow and scale up so that they can withstand it.
Mm-hmm. Good for you, man. You're doing great work. Um,
Appreciate that.
yeah, I'm talking to the I'm talking to the Michael Jordan of mental health.
I,
CPAism.
I can't take that one.
Chicago, you got the red on. No, it does seem like you're playing a game that's at a high level. I'm not even an expert to be able to say whether that's right or not, but it does feel like there's a deep authenticity and care and focus for the work you're doing, and that does come through. I can speak to that. What's like classic like classic first big mistake that people are making in this space? Like you come in, you do your assessment and your analysis, and you're like, oh, there's that trend again, there's that problem. Is it the complexity of paying employees or contractors, or is there some other big monster that they typically run into that they may not even know is staring them down.
Yeah. I think compensating staff, that's like the number four. The number one is probably the commingling of funds. That's the big no no because, well, I think it's obvious why you shouldn't do it. Um, but it just makes it incredibly difficult to know how you're doing, right? So if you've got, let's say you've got a mental health practice, but your Amazon Prime subscription's on there and like your daughter's daycare is on there. Like, sure, it's your business, your money, your baby. I get it. But then if you ever want to look back and see like, how did I do? You have to do so much extra work and you got to add this and back out of that. Um, so that can, that's probably the number one no no. So big mistake to avoid. Don't, as tempting as it might be, just resist the urge to try and commingle.
Nice. Okay. Was not expecting that, but yeah, it makes a ton of sense. Keep your yeah. You fences have reasons, you know. There's a great short story about like don't tear down a fence until you know what it's for. So
That's good.
yeah, I won't spoil it, but there is a surprise at the end of that one.
Okay.
But the message and the lesson is there at the beginning, which is like, you know, I'll just tear this fence down. You know, well, maybe, maybe not. So there are some good boundaries, and fences make good neighbors, and fences make good, like sort of brackets for our personal endeavors and our business lives,
Right.
and keeping those two things nice and clean.
Yes. Yes.
Hmm.
Where do I find the rest of this story? Because now I got to hear it.
It's called Chesterton's Fence.
Chesterton's Fence. All right,
How's
I'm gonna
that
check
send
it
you
out as soon
thinking?
as.
Here's a synopsis on Farnworth. Let's see. Yeah, I'll send it to you when I'm done.
Okay, I'm excited now.
It's good. It's good.
Because I'm a big boundaries guy. So I don't know if you read Henry Cloud's book on
Mm-mm.
boundaries.
No,
Um, you should check that out. I'll
I
pass
will.
one back to you.
Thank you.
Really good because it's healthy, right? So any type of like boundary related topic, I'm all for that.
Hmm.
Um, even financial boundaries.
Hmm. What about time boundaries? Are you a 4 hour work week person? Are you a 80 hour work week person? Like, how do you structure a week?
On the topic of boundaries, I'm just kidding. Um, well, I'm in a transformational period, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was not a very good steward of my time early on because I bought into the notion of hustle, right? Hustle.
Yeah.
I don't even know what they call it. Like hustle culture, right?
Hmm.
Where it's like, you will only eat if you kill it, drag it home, forget sleep. You don't need sleep. Sleep when you're dead. Yeah, that I
That's really
took the
sad.
pill, and that was me for a very long time. And then I kind of shifted, did a 180, embraced the Tim Ferriss mindset where, oh, 4 hours, that's all I need. Get in there, get the mission critical stuff done. That didn't work for me either. So, no knocking of Tim or his idea, but in this profession and in my world, I think my wife would have a problem if I only showed up for 4 hours, right? So I had to kind of retinker it. So now I'm in this transition where I'm trying to embrace Dan Martell's philosophy on buying back my time.
Mhm.
And you hit on this earlier. So I hope I heard you right, and I'm not butchering it. But you hired a graphic designer, project manager, and they produced some really great stuff for you, right? Um, I'm in that season where I am buying back my time and that I'm getting really dope people. I'm gonna keep stealing that word now. Thank you. Getting super dope people, super talented, that can do what I was doing, oftentimes way faster, way better, which affords me the time to kind of focus on bigger, more thought leadership things. So, um, not the 4 hour work week, but it's kind of like 30, 35 right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking this weekend, does the word dope come from the word dopamine? I mean, it's certainly related. But I've had a hit of dopamine for sure. Seeing my rule for 2025 come into fruition, which is it's a simple statement, and the statement is, "Don't do it, Steve." That's the statement. It's like, don't touch it. Don't put your finger on that. Like, just let them do the work, and
Don't do it.
you're not going to help it along by futzing around with it. But there's also this could resonate. I don't know if there's like this concept 10x is easier than 2x. That's a book that's out there. And then there's this whole like EOS philosophy that's kind of connected to that in some way or parallel to it. But anyway, one of the big ideas is that, like you think about athletes or rock stars or people who are high performers, and they don't go out there and they don't have 5 days in a row of game day, like LeBron is not like game day and then another 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 game. Then I'll take 2 days off. No, it's like game day, rest day, practice day, game day, something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm also in a transformational state where, and I have not arrived yet, where I think I've looked at how my weekly cadence goes, and I'd be interested in having Wednesday just totally off, having Sunday night full on. Sunday night is game night. Let's go. Monday might be kind of on the tail end of that, kind of a practice day, and Tuesdays maybe a game day, and then Wednesday is off, and then Thursday is a practice day, Friday is game day, Saturday is off. And I just think that's an interesting way to think about how to use my time, that I wasn't really even in a position to think about that 20 years ago, because my jobs that I chose to take were not that kind of job where you could just structure it. But in the entrepreneur, like out in the wild, there's no church in the wild, but you got to go to church sometimes. So, so how do
That's
you structure it for you?
that I've never heard of that before, but I really like it.
No, it's pretty
Um,
fascinating.
where did you discover this?
I think the book is called 10x is easier than 2x. And
That's where they
I,
talk about the game day, off day
I
simulation.
believe so. Yeah. I'll send that to you too. I'm only laughing because I'm enjoying the conversation enough with you to just be real. But like we just moved, and this whole work situation right now is like a house of cards. Like it's like a TV tray on top of a TV tray, basically. I noticed my screen shaking. I'm like, oh yeah, we got to get this straight. Yeah, it's 10x is easier than 2x by Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan.
Okay.
And it's an interesting collaboration. Now that I remember, Dan Sullivan, who's been doing coaching for a long time, Benjamin did some kind of study into either neuroscience or psychology or organizational psychology. He really brings an interesting lens to the work they co-authored it together. And really Dan's kind of at the core of it, but Ben does a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to working out the ideas. And so it's a really good read. So I think it's in there.
Okay. That's really good. I like that. Mostly because it gives permission to take your foot off the gas for a minute, which as entrepreneurs, you don't feel like, or at least for me, I feel like sometimes I haven't earned the right to take a break, right? There's this internal dialogue where it's like, well, you didn't do what you planned out to do this year, so you don't get a day off, brother.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you hear that ding? That was an email. Go check it. But I like your framework because it's like, or Dan Sullivan's framework. It's like you ain't got to be 100% all the time. You can have a practice day. Take a layup. Don't slam dunk. I like that a lot.
Yeah. Or again, another bit of wisdom from my brother. I can't take credit for, but he's gotten me into Formula One racing, And I think it was Michael Andretti said, race cars have brakes so they go faster. So it's like, not only is it just like okay to do, it's optimal. Like how chilling is that? Like, oh, but you can swing that pendulum too far. Some people are like, yeah, it's a long break, buddy. You should probably get back to work. It can go both ways. But for somebody like you, like performing at a high level, uh, hustle culture survivor, trying to figure out the right way, like, do consider that.
Race cars have brakes so that they can go faster.
Yeah. And those are the best
Man,
machines in the world. And those things go 200, 300 miles an hour, whatever it is.
I get it. That's absolutely brilliant. It's like that nice little punchline where it's like it just you don't even need to marinate on it too long. It's just like, wow,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, entrepreneurs need to. It's a tough pill to swallow though, right? Because you hop on LinkedIn and everybody will make you feel like you're a lazy POS.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you're not, um, yeah, that's good. Thank you so much, Steve.
Dude, thank
Like
you, man.
I
I
actually needed
really,
to hear that. That's good.
oh, good. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's the best. And we get to share it with a whole bunch of other people. Who knows where they're at? But man, thank you for coming on the show. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I would love to get a dinner with you sometime or just talk again. Have you on the boost for part two. I know you'll be coming to the conference and speaking at the conference in October. We'll button up those details here this week, actually, because we're announcing it really soon. But yeah, thank you for being on the show and sharing your wisdom. I really enjoyed it.
Man, I have enjoyed this thoroughly. I always feel like there's this um, give and take in a lot of these interviews, but I worry I may have taken more than I've given to you because between your wisdom and insights and stories, this was like a mini sermon. So thank you for taking me to church. Like for real. This is
Well,
awesome.
thank you. Yeah, I could say the same thing. So I think it's probably we're both feeling that. So it's probably a
Good.
fair fight, which I appreciate. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, man. All right. Thanks again. I'll talk to you soon.
Cheers.
All right.